In today's World Insight, the rise of the renminbi as a key world currency. How does the Chinese currency hold up? What are the prospects of the renminbi's broader use in trade and as a reserve currency? And a green turnaround for an Australian mining company that bets big on clean technologies. A word with Andrew Forrest, the chairman of Australia's iron ore giant Fortescue Metals Group.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. With China keen on opening up the financial sector and Chinese enterprises going global, the renminbi has gained wider international use. China had just imported the first shipment of liquefied natural gas paid in Chinese yuan through the China National Offshore Oil Corporation and its French counterpart. The renminbi has also surpassed the euro to become Brazil's second largest international reserve currency. In recent years, the renminbi is fast becoming a preferred settlement currency. So what are the prospects of the RMB broader global reach? For deeper insights, let's have our panelists. I'm joined in Beijing by Michael Powers, Zhurins Insurance Group Chair Professor with the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University, and Liu Zhiqian, a senior researcher at Chongyang Institute of Financial Studies with Renmin University of China. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. We see already China's economy become the second largest in the world in terms of size, and also trading power, the third largest trading nation in the world after US and also the EU. However, when it comes to the use of RMB as a reserve currency worldwide is such a small proportion, why some currencies are being regarded as the reserve power, while other currencies, despite the economy size where the currency originally is coming from, is still very marginalized?
I guess I would begin by saying that currencies play several different roles in the world economy, and we focus on the reserve currency, perhaps largely because it has a special name, reserve currency. But there also, it's important to consider which currencies predominate in foreign exchange transactions on a daily basis, which ones are the ones most frequently used in debt, in borrowing and lending internationally, and also which ones are used in international trade for transactions. They tend to be highly correlated. If when currency is highly used in one area, it's highly used in the other, with the exception perhaps of foreign exchange turnover, where the U.S. dollar is less dominant, if one's just counting, than it is, say, as a reserve currency. So I think that if it were just an issue of focusing on the reserve currency, there are a number of aspects that are important there. In terms of perhaps long-term stability, confidence of traders and other components of the economy. But when it comes to other things, such as the issuance of debt and daily trading, there certainly is more room for activity and movement up and down. So I think that what we can look at is a multifaceted approach to progressing in terms of changes in the use of various currencies.
Some have been describing the choices of reserve currency for most of the economies in the world. It's almost like a popularity contest. Who is going to be more popular and what is going to be the deciding factor in determining whether one currency is more popular than the other? It's a very interesting question, isn't it, Professor Powers?
One could look at the war in Eastern Europe, certainly, and the sanctions that were imposed by the United States and the EU as another source of concern in many nations around the world about the dominance of these currencies. So the US dollar is approximately 58% of reserves. The euro is approximately 20% of reserves. Together, that's 78%. That's a very, very large majority. So if these two parties agree on imposing sanctions on the countries such as Russia or whatever, they can have a very significant effect. And I think that Other countries looking at that situation perhaps feel that in the future we should have a more multilateral contribution to the economy, so that single entities like the United States or Europe can't have so much influence at a particular time in history.
Now, Professor Liu, we see that China, together with some of the Middle Eastern countries, for example, and also some in Latin America, such as Brazil, has been working a lot recently on the currency swap and also the use of RMB in trading between those nations. So how much do you see this will give a momentum for further change in terms of RMB gaining more status as the possibility of reserve currency for the future?
I believe that these actions we have taken with the Middle East or Middle Eastern countries, and also some other countries in Arab Asia, oil exporters, because of following point, the point that just as we have already discussed, the popularity. China, by using this data to promote the Chinese yuan or renminbi more popularity, because only by the popularity that renminbi can be well recognized, well accepted by the global business community. So in this way, that this action is a very strong signal and also a good test for renminbi, whether renminbi can stronger, can stable, and can already secure to safeguard the interests of the trading partners. I believe that not only these countries we have already signed the agreement, but with other countries, for instance, the Belt and Road Initiative countries, we have already signed some renminbi settlement agreement in order to make renminbi more popular to this country, to local community. And also the next step I think is more important. Beside or beyond the popularity is how to convertible of the renminbi to the other currencies. By doing so, that we can use the renminbi everywhere to purchase the goods what these targeted countries need. Then the renminbi can be well used and implemented by this in trading business.
With the Russian-Ukraine crisis, economies around the world see financial sanctions against one economy with the strong use of dollar as the reserve currency could actually almost destroy an economy in the long term. So that there's an urgency out of geopolitical challenges we're facing today for China to popularize the RMB as a future possibility for currency, reserve currency. So this is a very interesting balance that it seems that policymakers have to think about it for the longer term.
It's quite important for us to consider the next challenges, whether this currency is to be more secured. That is, mean the security of the currency is becoming more and more important. As we know that the currency security is so sensitive now to all countries. When we see that the US dollar at the moment is no more secure, why did the US dollar is dropped from its share from international settlement and the reserve value? Because of the unsure or unsecured of the US dollar, because of its administration's policies, sanctions and political involvement, intervention in the other countries. So that made many countries, trading partners with the US, they have some worries about the stability of the currency because it's not so secure as before, as it should be. So this is a really big challenge to the rest of the world. So in this way, I should say that we should pay more attention. 3 preconditions for a currency to be a reserved currency in the world. First, the popularity, and the second is security, and the third is convertibility. So all these 3 things will be combined together to become a real currency as a reserved currency in the world. But I have another idea that for one country, especially for China, so large economy,
so that as the renminbi becomes more popular, more commonly used, I would expect to see changes in the holdings, not just China's holdings of U.S. debt, but the holdings of other countries around the world. I don't see that there's any particular crisis or difficulty that would arise from that. I think what Professor Liu suggested in terms of going, the evolution of currencies is quite reasonable. The idea that the U.S. dollar, which is still the dominant currency, and the U.S. is a major economic power, will remain in place, but that perhaps there will be a development of an alternative, some sort of index currency as an alternative, because it's very difficult for the world community to sort of pick one other currency that's going to challenge the dollar and say, or possibly topple it at some point in the future. I think it's much more reasonable to say, well, here's another approach. There's this index approach, and let's see what happens in the market, which one people prefer.
Michael Powers, Liu Zhiqian, gentlemen, thank you so much. This is World Insight. Coming up, a green turnaround for an Australian mining company that bets big on clean technology. A word with Andrew Forrest, the chairman of Australia's iron ore giant, Fortescue Metals Group. Next.